Hi guys, this is RP Singh, the editor of Asia Content News. You also know me as the chief curator of CMS Asia. So today we have with us Rajesh Kumar. Now, frankly speaking, Rajesh needs no introduction. He is the known name in the B2B world, especially in the marketing fraternity. But let me try to do justice to his profile. So he has spent over 3 decades in the marketing fraternity. Spending time with companies like SAP, HCL Infosystems, Profati Von Malay, Microsoft, to name a few. And currently, he's the regional head of marketing for, again, a leader in RPA, company called UiPath. I'm sure everybody knows what UiPath does. Apart from what Rajesh is doing in his marketing role, he wears many caps in his day-to-day routine. So he's been on board of various events and conferences and associations. Uh, he has been a strong advocate of B2B marketing, and uh, he will share with us his experience and expertise and a lot of new perspective on how B2B marketing world is shaping up. So without any further ado, uh, welcome Rajesh, welcome to our exclusive podcast for Asia Content News. Pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you, RP Singh. Thank you for having me here. Delighted to join you today. Looking forward to the discussion.
So let me start with something very basic. For a tech organization, content and marketing go hand in hand. You know, a lot of content is used for marketing, maybe because the sales cycles are too long and you need to keep the customer involved for a longer period of time. How do you and what do you envisage the role of content at UiPath going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the content has always been important, but it has come into a lot more focus in the most recent times when content marketing, largely aided by growth of digital, has become almost like a discipline. And I've been in B2C half my life, but now B2B for a long time. And B2B dependence on content is, much higher, and which is what, is for us as well. And I've seen in my last two roles, B2B content, because B2B, when you do a transaction, it's typically higher value. It's rarely an impulse purchase. The decision-making process is complex. It does require a lot more information exchange. And in most cases, if you see, there is a group buying. And there are multiple roles different people in the organization play, and they are trying to look at it from a different perspective. Right? And since it is not an impulse purchase, it is also means that's a longer term relationship. Therefore, the risk on both sides, as well as the investment on both sides, is higher. Right? And lastly, I guess the success of the relationship, success of the buying department or function, as well as the personal career success for the person who's making that decision, is impacted by the decision they make in many ways. So therefore, the content does play a very, very important part in this. And if I look at our scenario also, I would say content is possibly the most critical element, both from a brand perspective and demand perspective. It goes beyond marketing, it goes beyond campaigns actually. I would say you look at your corporate positioning, you look at your brand, you look at your product, you go to support function, you go to even your brand as an employer, your communication to your current employees, your future potential employees, even your past employees. I think content does play very, very key role in your overall experience of you as a company. Part of that is sales, and part of that is your brand, but it permeates the whole population.
Very rightly said, because I wanted to ask how it has gone beyond marketing, because a lot of brands today think that content is created for marketing purposes only, and their content journey or their content strategy ends there. So it's great to hear from you that content can actually be used in these multiple forms. So talking about your own experience of uh, beyond marketing use of content, where do you think content has been most useful for an organization?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the content, what is content? Beyond the sort of, I think the marketers are guilty of this. Whenever something new comes up, we quickly form some framework and we
Yeah,
make some big words, and then everybody's writing and talking about them, and it seems to take a life of its own, and it seems like more complex than it actually is. If I look at a very, very simplistic approach, content is about, why should I care? Right? About you as a company,
yeah,
about you
yeah,
as a brand, about
yeah,
you as a solution.
yeah,
Why should I, invest my time and effort in you, and why should I buy you? Right? So it's really at the heart of it is your positioning as a corporation, your positioning as a solution to a buyer need, your value proposition, that at the core of it you want to communicate. And that's, as you know, is at a multiple levels depending on which stakeholders and which audience you are communicating to. If you're talking to broader ecosystem and influencers, or like I'm in a startup situation, to your investors, content has a certain meaning. It's always contextual.
sure,
Like you say, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Value of content depends on who you are talking to. And then you are talking to, for example, like I said, your potential buyers, and within buyers there are different, in the group people play different role. There are influencers, there's a technological buyer, there is a business buyer, there is a financial decision maker, there's an influencer, there is a user, and so on and so forth. So what is your message for each of them? And the second part becomes, how do you tell it?
yeah,
Different people have different time span of attention. If you're talking to CFO, you're probably not going to get that much of time. But if you're talking to somebody who's going to be using that solution primarily, they probably have a lot more time to get into a different type of detail. Or in our case, you're talking to a developer, they have appetite for a different type of detail. And then it becomes a question of where do you tell it? You go where the watering holes are, where people are going. So, maybe it's a social media like a LinkedIn channel or a Twitter, maybe it's a non-physical, Still, a lot of the senior decision makers have, like breakfast clubs, and they prefer meeting in person, or their peer networks which are not exposed publicly, and there is a word of mouth. So you have to really, look at where they are more likely to see and consume the message, and the mood of the medium is also appropriate.
yeah. Great. Now, since you have spent times on both sides, B2B and B2C, do you think B2B companies are ahead of the curve in terms of using content for marketing?
Let me say it like this. Again, I think, once the term content marketing got invented, then we started measuring who's ahead, who's behind. I think the fundamental nature of content is different. In B2C, your messages are relatively simpler. I mean, I was in alcohol industry. So, the message is about taste, message is about premiumness, message is about heritage, and so on and so forth. Right? And I was in consumer goods, like confectionery industry, message is about taste, message is about fun, and so on and so forth. Right? There is inherently not that level of technical detail in your offering. Even if it is, it's not necessarily of interest to the buyer. So when they are buying it, it's about a lot more storytelling, a lot more emotional connect. And at the same time, you are in most cases addressing a mass market, and you're using mass channels. Therefore, you have to simplify your message so that in a whiff of a second, people are able to absorb it, retain it, and over multiple exposures, they form a certain perception or takeaway message for your brand. Now, come back to a B2B situation. So suppose you are buying a large software solution, or you're buying a large piece of equipment. So you actually want to get to a lot more detail of specifications of the product, comparison with other products, what kind of use cases exist for your industry, who has earlier used it, what has been their experience. If you're going to invest $1 million, you want to know what kind of rate of return you can expect. What are the different payment options versus return, rate of return. And therefore, somebody in finance may want to actually get into a lot more detail of that. And then you may want to go benchmarking with other products. So there is fundamentally a lot more detail. And so that's one fact. Second, like I said, you are never selling to a single person depending on the size and complexity. You're selling to a group of buyers with different roles of from a gatekeeper to an influencer to a technical evaluator to a decision maker to a user.
Yeah.
So everybody they sees it from a different aspect, right? So you have to articulate accordingly. And then in most cases, it is not that large, in terms of numbers. Right? If I'm selling a complex technology product, whether software or hardware or a piece of machinery, say for example, I'm talking to 1,000 companies and decision makers within those. So I have ability to go a lot more deeper because I will probably segment them by industry, by geographic location, by level of maturity, by size of their company, and so on and so forth. So therefore, I am probably going to be talking to say 500 people at the same time. Therefore, I have ability to hold their attention for longer. And by way of media efficiency, I'm probably not going to go and put an ad on the TV. I'm going to get them into the room and talk to them, or get them over a webinar, or get into one-to-few meeting, whether physical or digital, and be able to connect to them and talk at a different level. So I would say the basic framework of content in two is very different.
Sure.
It's not so much about being advanced. It's just the detail is a lot more here. Therefore, you could potentially imply it is more advanced. But I'm not sure whether advanced of this is relevant in the other case.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going beyond this B2C and B2B world, do you think they still exist with new normal coming in, new crisis going on? Has the communication become more edge to edge, which we call it as human to human?
I don't think it ever was. I think it's a misnomer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we tend to simplify things. If you look at a company, I mean, it seems more obvious when I'm buying a bottle of alcohol that a person is buying. Because like I said, there is a lot more emotional cues, it's personal consumption, and it's more visible. But the large decisions and companies are also made by people.
Yeah.
And company success depends on that. People's careers depend on the quality of decision they make. So if you make $1 million decision on buying a piece of software or piece of machinery and it doesn't work, it definitely doesn't do great thing for your career. And people do want to make the right decision that not only helps their corporation, but also will further their own career, but will also maybe, serve a larger purpose for the business world, or maybe even for the world overall, for the society and so on. So a lot of these things happen at a human level. And like I said, even in a buying group, people are people.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to, they do wear a professional hat, but the connect is always human to human. They have to get a sense of alignment with the story that you're trying to tell them, how it meets needs of their corporation, how does it meet the needs of their user in the organization, and how does it meet their need as a team lead or a decision maker, and further, the situation that they're trying to progress on. So definitely it is a human to human connect, and we always have to be mindful, if you're selling a technical product, it doesn't mean you throw a lot of technical detail. When you are talking to a person, you have to see what their needs are, what their drivers are, what do they have listening for, what are they looking for, and you have to actually, make a harder effort than B2C to make it relevant for them. and to tell in the language that makes sense for them. Like I'm talking to CFO, there is no point me throwing a lot of technical detail. Just like if I'm talking to a developer, there is no point me throwing a lot of financial detail at them. Yeah. You have to filter and customize and personalize message for them. What will appeal to them in their professional role, but also to their personal aspirations and likes and dislikes, etc.
And we all know that B2B sales and marketing process is a very complicated one. Not only the number of people involved, but also it's a very long cycle. And therefore, we, whether we like it or not, we divide this entire process into various stages of the funnel. So how do you advise other people who are trying to fix their content according to the stages of the funnel? So top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, because content, when it comes to content creation, a lot of people struggle and they end up making one content piece or one content program the content strategy for the entire funnel. So how do you advise them to use the content for the funnel?
I think it's a good question. And again, this typically gets a lot more in a B2B space. Because like you said, the decision process is longer. It's more involved. There are multiple people involved. And to that, you add another layer that in case of most B2B corporations, it's the company that is the brand. And then there are multiple product lines under which unless you educate the person, they don't know and they may not care if it is not relevant to them. When I worked in a number of large corporations where the price list, extended to about 4,000 items on it. So how do you build a content strategy for so many varieties of product? So I think the simple suggestion that I would have, I don't think I have advice, but maybe I have some suggestions from my own experience. I think simple suggestion I would have is that, if we put ourselves, try to imagine ourselves in the buyer's shoes and say, what would they want to hear, from us at this point of time? And sometimes it can look daunting, especially in companies which have been in existence for a long time and have a very large product range. Because over the years, so many pieces of content get created and put in structures and systems and so on and so forth. So anything you want to search, you probably get shown some 25 things. Not all of them may be relevant, not all of them may be current. And then in some sense, you have the risk of putting cart before the horse. But I think if you try to take a very simple, commonsensical approach, like I said, you say, who is the buyer or who in the buying group is audience for this message? And at what stage of buying they are. And like you said, if you just simplify again, funnel into top of the funnel, mid of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. Top of the funnel is about educating them. Middle of the funnel is about solutioning for their problem. And the bottom of the funnel is about helping them make a decision. If I look at an example of, say, category like what I'm working in right now, automation. Top of the funnel, they're really trying to understand, what is automation. They all been hearing this term, but what is automation? What can I do for the industry I'm in? Are people talking about it? So they're just trying to assess whether it is even for me, whether I should invest any more time. At that point, I will look at content which will be more educational in nature, saying, what is automation? How does it help? How are other people using it? What are other people saying about it? What kind of rate of return people are expecting? So at a high level, they start getting a sense, this might be relevant. And those things they may want to hear from me. They may want to hear from some industry analysts. They may want to hear some peer conversations, to get a sense of, yes, the world is talking about it. Maybe it's a time to adopt it and so on. So that decides nature of the content. And at this point, people's attention spans may be short. So you may need to do some bite-sized content. You may need to go where they go. They may not be interested in coming to a custom place and invest some time with, like, whether physical, whether digital. So it's something, they go to and then they see it and then they feel interested, they read more about it, or they watch a short video, or they see a social post, or they hear their peers talking about it on a platform. That raises their intrigue and takes them to a place where they choose to move to the next stage. And then you go to the stage which is possibly about solution. There they're trying to see what can it do in my specific situation. Right? So then you get to a stage where you say, okay, if you are in financial services industry and you are trying to address a loan moratorium situation, for example, in current scenario, then how does a solution like this help you? Then they want to get into a bit more detail and say, how will the workflow be impacted? At what stage does the solution come in? What is my current situation of solutions? Do I need something else in place? Does it work with what I currently have? Will it require training for my people? What kind of rates of return can I expect? So this is the point at which they're willing to get more detail with you. They probably want to see a POC. They want to see a demonstration of the product. They want to see a case study of actual user who has done it. They may want to talk to them. So it's a different type of discussion that you get in. So that becomes your content. Then the third stage is when they're they figured out, this solution is for them. They figured out it can solve the problem they had in mind. Now the decision is who to buy from. Right.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Arpi?
Yes.
I lost you in the video. So yeah. So they're trying to see, which is the actual product or the brand I want to buy. So that's when they get into maybe, potential benchmarking of your product or solution with the other offerings. They want to talk to actual users exactly in their industry who they identify with, right? And they want to get into, details like financial arrangement. Should I go for one-time payment? Should I go for subscription? Things like that. The finer detail. And through this process, different types of people in the decision making will come in. Some may be one-to-one conversations, some may be group conversations. So therefore, your content will start changing. So maybe, more face-to-face connect, more meetings, meeting actual people. Some of those things may start getting. I hope that gives you a sense of, what it might mean. And then if you look at different product categories, something maybe addresses finance, something addresses operations, something addresses manufacturing. So according to those personas, type, nature of the content, how you present it, starts.
Sure. No, that's a great detailed, description of how it pans out across the funnel, and obviously, across industries, the overall cycles may be shorter or longer, but that's the process. That's the framework. So
yes, I mean, you spoke about B2C earlier. If I'm going to buy a, paste tube, I have already seen a lot of commercial. I'll say, okay, let me try it this time. Doesn't work, I'll take another one next time. But when you're buying, even in consumer category, maybe if you're buying like an expensive luxury car, your decision process gets somewhat in this arena, those B2C, you do some educational stuff, you then say you go do a test drive, talk to other buyers, then you get into comparing very close by brands and saying, oh, which one works better, where do I have a better deal, and like that. I think it's just sort of the nature of complexity and the risk and the financial commitment that it involves.
Sure. And now, as we are going through a huge pandemic, we cannot not discuss it, and, how do you see in the last 4 or 5 months, has the role of content changed during pandemic? Do you see brands, at least in the B2B space, or organizations in the space, are they investing more or less in content? And what do you think, overall, has there been a change in what content was supposed to do and what content is now doing during pandemic?
It's a great question. And how I think about it, Arpi, is that it has made the importance and criticality of content a lot more apparent than it was. At some level, when things are running on a regular schedule, you tend to take it as another component, which is happening, in some fashion. But I think what changed drastically in this scenario, because, nothing you did earlier would be taken for granted. So you had to step back and take a, critical look at what really makes sense. And again, without getting complicated, I would say, in a very simple, commonsensical way. Now, I can share, for example, for me or for us, it was obvious that everybody's, whatever we were doing was disrupted in an unprecedented manner. So it definitely did not make sense to continue what we were doing without paying heed. And then when we looked at ourselves, for us, the moment this situation hit, it became critical. How do we take care of our employees' health and well-being? How do we maintain continuity of operations from a customer and partner standpoint? And then how do we, look at our overall responsibility to the community and the society at this point? When I look at all of those things, it seemed, just not the right thing to keep pushing your regular sales messages. So you definitely had to put yourself in the customer's shoes. They were going through the same thing. They were trying to figure out how to manage health and well-being of their employees, how to keep their business operations, continuity. And as a company, how could they help in the situation? In that situation, what can you tell them? So firstly, to me, we had to just step back and say, we are not going to actually send any messages for some time. We're going to give it all a break, right? Because people just need time to gather and address the most critical things. They are human beings, right? You said human to human. They are worried about their own families. We all were, right? And we all still are worried about how to get operations from home. At that point of time, nobody's interested in getting your clever, marketing or sales messages, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the authenticity, simplicity, and empathy in the messages became very, very important. So, like I said, many brands we saw doing some very clever messaging, which for a minute will bring smile to your face, right? Which is great, right? Nothing wrong with that. But if it is not followed by authenticity of intent, then it is going to generate more dissonance than it is going to generate appreciation. I think this was the time, or this has been the time to brands to live their purpose. So you have to really walk your talk, and what you do now will go a long way in how people look at your brand and how to see it. So for example, for us in this scenario, we opened out all of our solutions, gratis, and our technology help for governments and for public institutions to help.
Sure.
And they welcomed it very much, and they welcomed it. They brought us into this to help with, for example, quarantine data collation, to issue of, e-passes, curfew passes, managing huge amounts of data because there are no people. Right? Yeah. And then and many of the things that we could do being a new age technology became obvious. It didn't matter what system they had in place because we had no issue with any kind of interdependency. It sits at a user interface layer. Yeah. We could do most things remotely and on mobile because there were nobody on ground.
Yeah.
So we did practically everything over, remote with just one person on ground at their end or something like that. Right? Then many of the things that could be done by older technology but would take weeks and days, you could do in like 48 hours. That helped you. And those kind of things then generated a lot more connection and a lot more appreciation. And we took many of those stories back to our customers. That this is how we are able to help. How can we help you? And we looked at two things. One, we said what we called as responding to COVID together. And other thing we said, working in these fast changing times. So we said, some which are very COVID specific, like for healthcare, for government, for public institutions, and so on. Others are, how do you keep simple things running, like, salary disbursal to your customer invoicing to documentation and so on and so forth. So we spoke with people or our customers only about things that mattered at that point of time in small groups, in a very one-to-few and one-to-one conversational manner. No packaging, no fancy things around them. That resonated. Yeah. And prompt. I mean, like with, I think we had the first conversation around how can technology help in COVID within about 8 days of lockout starting. Right? And we didn't sort of, build this whole thing around it. So we've got something to share with you. Can we just have this webinar? And people turned up. And then across the company, we focused. And I think in 3 weeks, we generated about 40 such use cases, which we shared freely across everywhere. That generated a lot more dialogue. Then we moved to next stage. And then we realized that, honestly, nobody knows how the situation is going to shape up. Right?
Yeah.
So we are better off joining hands and collaborating with our customers and experts in the field and trying to figure out how can we together solve it. So we brought some experts, analysts into the conversation, say how do they see the situation? What is their analysis of previous such crises? What is their advice? Then we spoke to our customers, say how are they handling it? Because everybody is trying, nobody is sitting still. And there is a lot of learning for us out of that, for between different organization as a peer, there is learning on that. And hopefully, out of that, a common direction emerges. So those are some of the things that, we've tried to do to make it very simple, make it very personal, make it very direct, and make it participative and make it joint. So we got a lot of user content. They spoke about how they're using it, how this is helping them, things like that. And their focus changed. What was like a innovation type of discussion earlier, became very focused on, driving revenue, managing costs, and keeping resilience.
Yeah.
So that whole framework sort of changed. I hope that answers your questions.
No, it does. And the 3 keywords that I took out of your answer is, simplicity, authenticity, empathy. Because, for at a business level also, for a lot of organization, the discussion has moved from business continuity to survival, and therefore those 3 pillars of communication are very, very important when you're distributing your content in any form. So now, because of the situation, a lot of old business principles have changed. For example, events are not happening. Physical events are not happening. And similarly, there are other things which we used to do earlier, we are not doing now because of the limitations. So therefore, the role of digital content per se has increased, evolved, and basically everybody is trying to now ride this wave, or they're trying to do something with digital content. Now, some of them are at a stage of starting their digital content journey. Some of them have experimented with some content programs in the past in not so dedicated way, but they have, tried their hands. So going forward, what would you suggest or advise these brands who have maybe flirted with digital content so far, or who are about to start their digital content journey? They are at the tipping point now because of the situation, because of the business necessity. What do you advise them?
Yeah, I would again, suggest from 3 perspectives. One, I think it is great time to accelerate digital, simply because there is no option.
Yeah.
No option for companies who are marketing or selling. And there is no option for customers who are buying. So it is a great time to push the bar. And in any case, actually, I would say other way around. I said, this bar is going to get raised. It's a great time to be a part of it and not to miss the bus. So having said that, I think it's important to first think of content standalone before we start talking about digital content. Again, digital somehow has gotten blown out of proportion, over the last few years.
Yeah.
Like I said, content is very simple. How are we going to add value to the person that we are talking to? What is their need and what is relevant? If you keep it at that level, I think since a lot of the bells and whistles have been, taken away, it is standing exposed in some sense, right?
Yeah.
The starkness of this makes it very obvious, whether you have something meaningful to say or not. So therefore, it is forcing all of us as marketers and as business people to get to the core of what do we have to offer? To bring that back, I would say again, it is relevant to this and which is relevant to the current situation.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think I spoke about three things. I said this is like a watershed moment where both the buyers and sellers are forced to adopt digital, which is a good thing, right? Because many times we are hesitant, but when such cataclysmic things happen, it forces us to use. And when we use initially under duress, so gradually we get to like it. We start seeing the benefits of many things, which probably we would have pushed away for a long time. So I'm not saying everything will become digital, but I think the move to digital definitely will change the landscape of whatever emerges after.
Yeah.
So it's to that extent, it's not a choice. I think you have to go with the flow and do it. Second, I think for a minute, I'm removing or separating content from digital. They're connected, but they're not the same thing. Content is at the core of what is my value proposition for the person I'm talking to. And now many of the bells and whistles and fancy things of whether events or anything else have kind of, been stripped of the reality. Therefore, you are standing exposed and you have to focus on being very clear and sharp about what is it that you have to offer and why should they listen. And people have many things on their head. Their attention spans are even lower. They are dealing with a huge crisis. Last thing they have is, time to waste. Right?
Yeah.
So I think getting back to your roots, stating your value proposition in a simple, concise, effective, persuasive manner is becoming. The third part is digital. I think digital, of course, but we should recognize that physical is not equal to digital.
Yeah.
For example, if you had 5 physical events and you say, I will do now 5 or 10 digital events, it's not the same. Because the fundamental nature of it is different. It's a tactic. It's not the end in itself. And as a medium, it has different things it offers and different constraints it puts on you. So people, it allows you the benefit of interactivity. It allows you benefit of reaching a large audience. It allows you, so many other benefits like peer recommendations and so on and so forth. You have to think of it as a pull medium rather than a push medium and adapt how you communicate your message to that medium.
Sure.
I think that's sort of the opportunity which will save us from trying to do the same thing and then, resulting in wasted effort. Suddenly there are just so many webinars. It's become the new joke, right? Nobody wants to go to the webinar any longer. But if it's relevant, people are still doing webinars. If it is relevant, people are doing it.
Yeah, true.
Looking forward to it.
No, great. I think great insights, great advice for a lot of newcomers. And when I say newcomers into the content world, because from the outside it looks very simple, but when you get into it, it opens up a whole world of opportunities. I will not call it challenges and problems, but it's a whole world of opportunities which it opens up. So thank you, Rajesh, for sparing time for us. From your busy schedule, as you said, the 6 hours have become 12 because of the restrictions.
Yes.
But very grateful to you for your time.
Thank you so much, Arpi. I really enjoyed being on this session with you, and I hope this is of use to people. And I'm obviously happy to follow up this conversation. If anyone has any query, please feel free to reach out to me on any of these social medias, and I'm happy to at least share what I know and also learn from what you've been doing. It'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh.